When the High Isle expansion for Elder Scrolls Online recently released, there was obviously a lot of new and exciting things to do. But few things have generated such recent hype as today's topic, the Oakensoul Ring. Now, the Oakensoul Ring is a mythic item, meaning that only one can be equipped, and like its other mythic counterparts, it can only be obtained through the Antiquity system, which is archaeology in Elder Scrolls Online. Despite 4 of the 5 leads for this item being outside of High Isle itself, you do need to have purchased the most recent expansion in order to create the ring. However, there was definitely incentive to get hold of one of these, as it granted you an absolutely insane amount of buffs for a single item. These were, namely, Major Berserk, Major Brutality, Major Courage, Major Force, Major Heroism, Major Prophecy, Major Protection, Major Resolve, Major Savagery, Major Sorcery, and Minor Endurance, Fortitude, and Intellect. Now, as you can imagine, quite a few people soiled themselves when they saw this item on the test servers. But, like many of the more powerful mythic items in the game, there is a drawback to equipping it, and this time around you can only use your front bar abilities. Now, to explain how Elder Scrolls Online combat works, you have a front and you have a back bar, and each bar has 5 slots on each side for your skills, and then there are 2 slots for your ultimates, which are special abilities. Now, when you start out, you just have the front bar, and then you unlock the second bar at level 15. Now, Oakensoul, when you equip it, would restrict you just to that front bar. Now, one bar builds aren't a new concept in Elder Scrolls Online. Many players prefer them when they're running around the world, particularly overland, or doing world bosses, or doing delves, which are like solvable mini dungeons, or even dungeons themselves. It's generally accepted though that you're not going to get the same levels of damage and healing and utility when you're only using one bar as opposed to both bars. Enter the Oakensoul Ring. Now, as the ZeniMax developers have stated, this mythic was intended for people who like to have one bar builds. Because, they didn't get that many buffs and bonuses that the 2-bar build players, they thought they would make this ring and kind of balance things out a bit. So it is a nice idea to accommodate those 1-bar build players. However, they did reckon without a certain section of the player base who looked at this mythic ring and thought, here lies the key to victory and death of all who oppose me. Now, PvP, or player versus player, is a lot of fun in Elder Scrolls Online. It's also extremely min-maxed, and brilliantly creative participants are always looking for an extra edge and invent a plethora of PvP builds as a result. With every patch cycle comes adjustments to existing gear sets and perhaps the introduction of new ones, and the dedicated PvPers are out on the test servers running them all through their paces. Enter, once again, the Oakensoul Ring. Now, it's hardly surprising that PvP enthusiasts took one look at this mythic and saw the potential to delete their enemies. With that many buffs running permanently on your character, you would be a damage-dealing, healing, tanking, and killing Colossus. Even better, you didn't even need to bar swap. You just make a 1-bar build capable of destroying and surviving, and you'd be pretty much good to go. And judging by the amount of 1-bar, one-shot builds for all classes available on YouTube, the ring was enthusiastically embraced by the warriors and mages of the Dominion, Pact, and the Covenant. Of course, it didn't take long for the complaints to start rolling in. Nothing generates salt like good old PvP, and the tears were flowing freely from the victims of this new meta of Oakensoul supervillains. And to be fair, people were really getting smashed to bits with little to no time to react. I have been a very lucky recipient of many of those. And, while there are always overpowered specs and gear in ESO PvP, the Oakensoul Ring had ramped this up to all new levels of outrageous. Popular laments were that certain buffs like Major Courage, Berserk, and particularly Heroism were too much to put onto one single item, and also that you needed to buy High Isle to even get it. Some even called for the ring to be disabled in PvP environments, as it was clearly being used by a section of the player base it was not intended for. In riposte, the owners of the Oakensoul Ring decreed that it was absolutely fine, there was no problem, nothing to see here, and ZeniMax wouldn't nerf it so soon after High Isle's release, because that would be crazy. Well, it does look like the party's over. In Update 35, Oakensoul is indeed receiving nerfs, which will lessen its effectiveness. So the Oakensoul Ring is now going to grant the minor instead of the major versions of Courage, Berserk, Force, Protection, and Heroism. And it will also grant minor mending. So basically that means that up to Update 35, that will mean less spell and weapon damage, overall damage, critical damage done, damage reduction, and ultimate generation. Ouch. But you do get 8% increased healing. Now, That is not likely to placate the people who laboured hard to obtain this Oakensoul ring, only to have it swiftly neutered. Now, it does have to be stressed at this stage that the weaker version of the Oakensoul ring still has a lot of power into one item. You're still getting major brutality, prophecy, resolve, savagery and sorcery, as well as the minor endurance, fortitude and intellect. So that's still a lot of tasty buffs. Of course, the weaker version at the moment is just on the test servers. This hasn't gone live yet, but it is hard to see how it will be reverted. It really is hard luck on the players it was designed for, you know, the one-bar builders who just wanted to be a little bit stronger in PvE, or player versus environment. That said, you can't reasonably blame the PvP enthusiasts either for using an item placed in the game and maximising its potential in an environment it wasn't designed for. I mean, ultimately, ZeniMax developers have to carry the can for introducing the mythic in that state in the first place. And it does beg a belief a little that they didn't consider that piling that many static buffs on one item might have major implications for PvP as well as PvE. And if they were aware, surely they could have disabled the ring in PvP environments altogether. I mean, after all, ESO PvP is instance. There's no world PvP or flagging issues out in the world like in World of Warcraft, for example. So, you know, that would have saved an awful lot of players from spending hours and hours farming the leads for this ring and acquiring it, and now finding out that they're probably not going to be using it in PvP after all. The cynics are claiming that ZeniMax deliberately designed the ring this way, got everyone to buy High Isle, and then nerfed it as soon as they had the cash in their grubby hands. To be honest, the whole Oakensoul saga smells a lot more like they didn't really think hard enough about its potentialities before releasing it, or didn't heed the warnings from the test server players, or both. Ultimately, everybody loses by the nerf, and it really didn't have to be this way. And so likely ends the Ballad of the Oakensoul ring. There is still a verse to go, but I'm not anticipating a sudden twist in the tale. For me personally, I never had the ring, I never wanted it, but if I'm brutally honest, I'm not going to miss it in PvP. I mean, the option to use it will always be there, but it's much less appealing in its new form than in its current one. I'm sure the PvP boffins are already hard at work testing and forging brand new builds to torment the other factions with. And thus the circle of life and death goes on from patch to patch. So what say you, denizens of Tamriel? A fair change? A cynical cash grab? Or an appalling decision? Comment away. This isn't even the topic generating the most fury at the moment. That dubious honour has fallen to the combat changes, which are also in Update 35, and the light attack weaving in particular, but oh boy, is that a topic for another day. I will be back relatively soon, but until then, I am the conspicuous Moo, and a very good day to you.